Good morning and welcome to Leadership Unlocked. It's such an honor to be with you, and it's such a privilege to be with you again to really look at what is unlocking your leadership. And I think at the moment, there is an elephant in the room. That happens to be an elephant I took a photograph of in Kenya. But I think the elephant in the room for everybody is really AI robotics. And more importantly, how does that affect our relevance? How can we be relevant today? How can we inspire our students to believe in themselves, in us, in humanity? This is the David Game College in London. I've spoken to them. It's working really well. Where is this going? It's only been there for months. So what is that future that we're all going to have to face, adapt, and be relevant in? So these are my photographs that I've talked about and taken in Mongolia. And what I love there is they really do have a sense of clarity, a sense of leadership, of purpose, and a sense of their humanness. And just to show you, I might be 74 now, but that's how close the horses got as I took the next photograph. They practically went over me. And I think we need to realize that life is still a fascinating adventure. We're always migrating. This is in Western Mongolia. And I like to imagine this is -30 for 5 days, but the cattle are really like our values, our purpose, our identity, our students. Where are we going to guide them to those green pastures so they can flourish? How do we guide others to feel that they are flourishing? And I think the time really is to take us on a journey to our relevance and our humanness. I think this is what we need. And, as we go through the different seasons of our life, how do we adapt to those seasons? Do we know those core values that we will take with us from ever, from the schools, and how you've inspired those students, those teachers? Will they have those values to adapt to the world ahead and welcome people? And with your leadership, if you imagine that you're sort of there, this is something that has been with us since time began, where people need to see excellence, they need to see courage. So, as a leader with the responsibility of defining the future competitive advantage of Wales, that is clearly your opportunity, your challenge, your responsibility. Where do you think your leadership is most needed on that journey? And myself, when I was growing with my children, I asked my father once, I said, how should I educate my children? And my father simply said, make sure they play sports at which they can get seriously hurt. And that is really, I suppose I should have focused more on their academics. And they're actually all doing well. But at the age of 8, they've been sleeping in mud huts with me to put their hands out to see others. All my children were born in Japan, the first children to be born in the local hospital from foreigners. There's my daughter in the front row and me at the back with my wife, Victoria, and 2 brothers. And I think it is about having a different approach. So my boys, when they were 16 and 17, I sent them to live with the Maasai so they can walk with warriors and have those stories. And my daughter, when she was 14, I took her up Kilimanjaro to 18,000 feet. And again, I think really it is that sense of courage. What are we taking our children to do so they can go in search of those adventures and realize that life is a massive adventure? How do we today get people to realize that that is really their only competitive advantage? So decades ago, I wrote a book called In Search of Inspiration. And the opening line is really, I have the freedom of choice to shape my own destiny. I'm probably one of the first since our ancestors left the cave to really have that freedom. but I also have freedom for peace of mind, for happiness, for my trust in others. That's up to me. How do we bring that out in people where there are no structures? And I think, the book In Search of Inspiration, maybe I could have called it In Search of Relevance, because I think that's what we need today. So instead of going looking for this academically, what I did was to actually go and talk to people around the world, people with different experiences, different ideas. And I could ask them, what is important in your life? How do you educate your children? What would you like them to feel? And what I discovered is in all of these places, everybody could explain, I know what I'm hunting, protecting, and growing. And that's how I've discovered there is a map inside everybody. Whether you're the head of Ferrari in Australia, once you have a map, you can start to go back to your wisdom. And I think we all need that clarity today. And this is a map drawn by the Maasai in Kenya. They all know they're looking for those green pastures. What green pastures are you looking for? And what are you growing? Your cattle, your people, your capital. And what are you protecting? So this idea of everybody needing to know what are they hunting, protecting, and growing in their lives. And these ideas evolved over the last 50 years, in fact, more than that. In 1973, I bought a one-way ticket on the Trans-Siberian Express in search of adventure, opportunity. But if I'm too honest, it really was a gold Rolex that was bigger than my father's. And I got one after about 7 years in Japan, where I was working sales promotion, etc. But then my girlfriend told me to get lost, quite correctly. And I was devastated. So for the first time in my life, I realized actually it wasn't what I owned who I was. And it made me reimagine and look that clearly trinkets do not bring happiness. So at that time, I met a friend and he said, why don't you come on a camel safari? So I went on this camel safari in northern Kenya. And what I saw were the Maasai. And for the first time in my life, I saw people who had substance without arrogance. And what I realized is my education, my schooling, had simply been around teaching me how to be arrogant without substance. And they had substance without arrogance. And I realized also the only thing my school really taught was really effortless insincerity. It was not based on humanity. So I became fascinated. What is it that we've lost? And back in the 1980s, in fact, in 1981, I decided to go to Papua New Guinea. So I met the Papua New Guinea ambassador, Joseph Nombre, who remembers first contact. And I said, sir, what have you got that we've lost? He said, I really don't know. Why don't you go to my village? So there I am in the highlands of Papua New Guinea. And when I started to see they were running around with feathers and all sorts of other things. And I said, so why do you have so many feathers? And they simply said, well, a big man has many feathers. A bigger man or woman can hand out their feathers. That is leadership. We must create communities. So what I saw and realized is that it's handing out that give you authority. And I ask you, do you know people in your community who hand out their feathers and those who hoard them? Do you hand out your feathers? What was the last feather you received? When did you hand them out? Because it seems to be a part of our life. And then I went and learned about spears. You cannot buy, sell, or give them away. You have to accept the responsibility of the spear. So I saw whether I was in Papua New Guinea or I was in Kenya, it was the same. To earn that seat of leadership, you have to be generous. You have to earn your spear. And that Maasai community there, I asked them, I said, so who is the leader here? They simply looked at me in bemusement. I said, what is the problem you're trying to solve? We're all leaders. Tell us your problem and we'll tell you the most appropriate person. And think about your own leadership. Think about people who are going to be the most appropriate to deliver what you actually want. And when I got back to Tokyo, I asked the ambassador, Joseph, I said, "Sir, what is the single most important thing in your life?" And he just looked at me and he said, "It is my territory. Therefore, I know my duty and I know my aims and ambitions. I know what I'm hunting, protecting, and growing." So it made me realize for the first 99.9% of human existence, our identity has come from what we're protecting. And then I ask you is how big is your territory? Is it the community? Is it Wales? Is it the planet? Is it just your school grounds? How are you helping others protect and grow? And that is really the most important. Those skills that we grow throughout our lives. So I realized that I'd better go off and start to think about my own territory. What was it in those days? It was a couple of bars in Tokyo and a BMW. I wanted to earn my spear. I wanted to inspire others. So I started going on a series of journeys, taking camels across the Taklamakan Desert in China, going across Papua New Guinea with 24 bottles of wine and absolutely no food. And on that trip, we had a complainer. And I saw that complainers completely destroyed morale. So when I was invited to climb this mountain, I thought I'd better get some practice. So I decided to climb Africa's three 5,000-meter peaks, Kilimanjaro, Kenya, and Stanley. And people started saying they'd come. So I said, right, you sign a document. I will not complain if I get eaten on, trodden on by animals, if extra porters are employed to carry wine, because I wanted a commitment. And what do you not complain about? What do your staff not complain about? And from that experience, I discovered that really this is something I need to keep refreshing myself. So whether I was in Mongolia last month, talking to the nomads or a month and a half ago, about really what is their life? What is important to you? What is important to them? What are those skills we need on a daily basis? Where do we earn our courage, whether it's from rugby or from contribution? And what we do is literally we park our vans next to the nomads and start to talk to them about life, enthusiasm, lessons, energy. What is it? And obviously with some good whiskey as well. And more recently in Japan, I've been exploring generational wealth with businesses, family businesses at the foot of Mount Fuji. This fellow has been in a tea house for 6 generations. That sense of pride of knowing every stone. And the Welsh language is the oldest language in Europe, 6,000 or 5,000 years. English is only a few hundred years old. But it's wonderful talking to these people about their 450-year-old inn. What are they really protecting? And how do they guide those pilgrimage at the foot of Mount Fuji, up the mountain to have that self-belief? And this fellow here is 21 generations of running a sake factory. Will you be remembered in 21 generations or 5 or 2? I have no idea. I won't. I don't even know the names of my great-grandparents or even my grandparents. What is it we have to give people a sense of pride and agreement? And these are some of the people that we're working with. So what I saw from going on these journeys, climbing the mountains and being successful, I saw the power of teamwork, but more importantly, that they needed objectives. So I started in Japan with a portable toilet and a tarpaulin to start I Will Not Complain. And we found this derelict building in China, and we transformed it into a training center at the foot of the Great Wall, because I wanted to bring people together, to educate them about life's memories, about possibilities. And there is Bill Gates and Warren Buffett and doing some team building for them back in 1995. But what I really saw is people wanted context for their conversations. They actually wanted to find out what is going on, because I saw a group of people, whether they're teachers, whether they're anybody, they say, where do I belong? Where am I recognized? How can I inspire others? Why aren't I appreciated? And that's when I started to use the Great Wall as a metaphor. And I saw that incredible power. Once people knew what they were attacking, what they were protecting, what they were growing, they could start to have conversations, real conversations. And that's what I want to ask you, as the leaders of the future, defining Wales. What are those conversations you need to have with people? And about that time, Thomson and Reuters were getting together, and the head of Thomson in Tokyo, Dan Vedetto, said, look, we don't want a team building program. We just want to talk to people. And I said, look, can I try an idea? This is a map drawn by Caspar Ban, the Committee of the Councillors in Papua New Guinea. And basically, they all know what they're hunting, protecting, and growing. So I said, look, to the Thomson Reuters group, here is a blank sheet of paper. And that's what we did the other day in Cardiff. And we asked, what is it in your life that you are really hunting? To be relevant, to be inspiring, to be recognized. And what I saw is they could instantly draw a map. And on that map, they could talk about what they were hunting, protecting, and those growing relationships. So it made me really think about that. Maybe we're tapping into our most basic instincts of what's between us and our food. And as the industry of education changes, what is going to change? Is everybody going to have a job? What jobs are they going to change? Because I think this is the time to think about it. This is what is driving us, our insecurities of where we are. So what I've done is I've created a set of icons, asking people who sits around the fire. What are you hunting in your life? What are you growing? What are those skills, the wisdom, not in yourself, but in your teams? And as you become a leader and you move up that sense of identity, what does that look like? What are you protecting? What are the rivers, mountains, and swamps? And what I've discovered is everybody can draw a map. They can simplify who they are, where they are, what they are, whether it's Google in Japan or Itochu in Singapore. There are 16 different nationalities. But everybody can explain what they're hunting, protecting, and growing. The trouble is often people have different perspectives. So this is the chairman of an organization saying, we're heading for paradise. Aren't I brilliant? But all the employees see is bullshit bridge, fantasy applications, IT island. And that, unfortunately, is going on in so many organizations, especially as things get tougher, especially as business gets and people get laid off. How do we create a cohesive village that everybody can explain? This is Lloyd's of London. How do we migrate through the product path to the mountains of self-belief, to limited capital, to agents? Where are you guiding the students to? Where are you guiding your teachers? Where are you guiding your industry as things change? How do you actually see it? And this is one map and to show the power of it, drawn by the Gates Foundation. And what they wanted to do there, this is the China team. How do we work with Seattle to raise Africa? And everybody said, wow, what would be a project that is big enough to excite the team? So much so that they could come up with an idea that could reunify the world. And that was really mobilize the resources from China for polio eradication, for global polio eradication. What is that thing that you want to be known for changing, inspiring, creating education Wales that nobody will ever forget? And I remember seeing in the BBC that they'd reached that milestone. I can't claim credit for it. But where I'm probably proudest is the work that we're doing in Wrexham and elsewhere at the homeless centre. And the map is exactly the same. This girl happens to be a billionaire of fourth generation of a $25 billion organization in America. So it seems that she is also working out in her family the rivers, the mountains, and the swamps. And this lady here, she's 18 now, Macy, and she doesn't speak. She's a self-selected mute. But we gave her a blank sheet of paper. So what do you want to grow in your life? What do you actually want to, who do you want round your fire? And it just created this lovely sense of clarity, as it did here at the Wherry School, which focuses on kids with autism. And we said, what does it mean to have a school that is the best that it is as quality education? What is a quality education? What is character development? And how do we become recognized at the best? And they created these maps to explain it to each other. So what we want to do is to take people on a journey of becoming. How do we do this? So this is Bill Gates back in 95, as I mentioned, on the Great Wall, a photograph I took. He then used this just 2 or 3 months ago on his LinkedIn post. Let us fly a kite. 1995, and I was visiting with my father. How do we give people those memories that 30 years later, they still have those memories? They remember you for what you made them feel, that sense of purpose and identity. So this is why I think education is so important, but where we can change it. And this is what we're asking. What wisdom and knowledge do you need to live a purposeful, well-lived life? This happens to be in Dubai for 1,000 students. We started by asking, what is wealth? What does it mean to you? And the teachers then talked about hunting, but they're hunting to be a good person, happiness, trustworthiness. They're growing experience, courage, and zest. And they want to protect their families. So what we've discovered inside every student, there is a map. And today we're not going to ask you to draw a map, but just think about it metaphorically, because this is a map we drew in Scotland. And now looking at where is AI? What is AI? How can we use it? Well, just yesterday, or in fact, last week, I was talking to a friend in Tokyo and I said, so what he said he's in AI. So we took a photograph of this map and we just said, what could we do with it? And this is how the AI analyzed it. The confidence, the fears. And then we said, given you understanding the young lady's mapping, give us a 6-month program. And AI immediately came up with what they could do on month 1, month 2, month 3. And then they came up with a reflection, growing the section of her map. What goals did she set? Outcome, boost in self-esteem and confidence, clearer direction. The final outcomes by the end of the 6-month program, she will have strength and confidence, reduced fears. This is AI. And it has blown me away, to be honest. I had no idea it would happen. So I think it is on us at the moment, but how do we maximize it? So whether we're executives on the Great Wall of China, wherever we are, let us simplify who we are. What are those goals we have to be a leader, to be respected, to create a way that we can understand ourselves and each other beyond jargon, beyond delivering curriculums? How do we tap into the soul? And that's why we then bring the Maasai to teach in Japan or around the world, because they have that sense of clarity. They have that sense of natural authority. And on this example, I think is relevant because Emmanuel is talking there as a warrior. And he says, as a warrior, we carry the spear, we protect the territory. But when we become an elder, we change, we put the spear away, we carry the stick of wisdom. So our values of respect, responsibility, and courage remain the same throughout their lives, those core values. But their authority, responsibility, and accountability changes. And as you move through leadership, please think about what that is and how you're relevant. Has your relevance changed and grown? Because we believe relevance comes from appreciating we all have that immense sense of power of our personality. We have to enjoy and use and appreciate on a daily basis our life experience. That defines us. That is our wealth. That is what people look at when they look at our souls. And what is that status of our contribution? Do you know how you're contributing? Do you feel that sense of joy as your leadership and education is appreciated to enrich people's lives? So here are just a few more maps to show you how this works in Switzerland. Parents, teachers, children, are they really, really at the center of your world? How do you see the mountains and challenges ahead, especially as a leader? And you now look down on the growth of your people. What is that going to be? Who are you going to invite round the fire? How are you going to inspire others to come round that fire of leadership? And how are you going to keep a pride in the non-academics, in their hearts and souls that you're going to touch as the future of education, as Wales leads with initiative, leads with innovation? How are you going to do it? And this is a map drawn by Chris Jones in education. He's been there 35 years. This is just before COVID. He saw the Department of Funding Education, everybody fighting each other. And then a few months into COVID, Ofsted had lost some of its control. Suddenly we could start to define what is leadership in education, new ways of thinking about it. And now here in 2021, and he's going to update it shortly, leadership is different. Governance, teaching, children, everything is a different opportunity. So really, as the leader of the future with that responsibility, what are you going to do? What are you going to make people feel? What are those questions you're going to get children to ask? Because in Kenya and elsewhere around the world, knowledge is not wisdom. Wisdom is not valued. And that's what I think we need today. So really, I suppose my question, as I asked it at the beginning, is, as the leader with the responsibility of defining the future of Wales, how do you see your current territory? What are those boundaries for your leadership? What are you going to hunt, protect, and grow in your life? Where do you see those rivers, mountains, and swamps? Who's around your fire? And really, how do you know if as a leader you've been successful? And then where on your map do you deliver the Future Generations Act? That is part of Wales' visionary future. Where are you on that? So thank you so much for listening. I love being a part of your world. I hope it's only a matter of time till we're all sitting around together talking about education, what changes and how it can lead to inspiration, embracing the latest AI, but keeping people's hearts and souls warm and growing. So thank you very much. I leave it for Tracy to give you a little bit more briefing on really what you might be discussing in your groups. But I really hope that this is enough to get you started, to start thinking about the way forward. But thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of your day, your morning, and hopefully your lives. Thank you very, very much indeed.